Yo, what's going on, guys? Alright, so today we're going to be looking at animation. We're going to be looking at frame by frame animation, where we create each frame individually to create our sequence. So previously we looked at tweening, where we got the computer to work out the distance between the two spaces. This time we're going to be doing it manually. Alright, so we are in Adobe Animate now, which is all good. Let's just make sure that we've got our screen so we can see everything. So we're just going to go to up here to where it says 100% fit in window. Okay, so down here we've got our timeline, and we're set to 24 frames per second, which is kind of your standard for animation. We're going to create a ball bouncing from the top to the bottom and back up to the top again. So roughly halfway on our timeline, we want our ball to be at that middle point. So we want our ball to be down here right at the bottom for 12 seconds on the 12th second. So we're going to create an oval. Now we always use this kind of ugly green color, so we're going to stick with it. I've turned the stroke off so there's no stroke, and we've got our fill color. So we're going to start off at the top by creating our first frame. So I'm going to hold down the shift key to draw a nice circle. There we go. That circle looks good to me. Alright, so as we can see on our timeline here, we've now got a little black dot on our timeline, which means that that is now a keyframe. Now we're going to go from one keyframe to creating another keyframe. To do so, all we need to do is click on this little button here which says insert keyframe, and that is going to create a new frame of animation, a new frame in the next point. Alright, so in the next frame we've got the exact same thing happening. So frame 1, frame 2. What we want to do is we're going to now move our ball forward in time. So we're going to move it so it starts to descend. I'm just going to click onto it, onto the ball itself and onto the circle, and use the arrow key. But now as we can see, when we move it down, we can't see where our previous frame was, and ideally we don't want to have to be flicking back and forward between the two. So what we can do is we can turn on what is called onion skinning, which is this little button here. If we click on that, then we can now see a kind of shadow of what is happening in the frame prior to the frame that we're working on now. Yeah, so we can see our progress. So we're going to create another, we're going to repeat that process. So we're going to insert keyframe, and we're going to move this down again. So I'm going to use the arrow key again just to keep it in a straight line. See, so we can see the two shadows, and as you can see, the first one is becoming more faded, so we can actually see that process. And if we move it back, so we're on this frame which is selected, and in the light green, the lime green kind of color, that is the frame which is following. So that's the next frame. So the onion skinning works on the frames before and after. You can change those features if you so choose, but I'm just going to leave it as it is. So like I said, for the 12th frame, which is this frame here, we want to be at the bottom of our page. So we're going to keep adding in frames. We're going to add another frame, select, use our arrow key, and we're going to move our circle down slightly. Insert another keyframe, down again. Insert keyframe, down again. So we're not going to really be looking at the principles of animation in this video. We may look at them briefly I may create another video after using the same resource which explains some of the principles of animation in regard to this, what we have here. So we're at keyframe 10 now. Let's go back to that previous frame. Let's move that one up again slightly. Back to this one. I'm going to move that one up slightly. Insert a new keyframe. So we're at keyframe 11 now. So it should be just before we hit the floor. And then for the next keyframe, we're going to go kind of into the floor. Alright, brilliant. So we've got our frames of our ball falling or descending. Let's get rid of the onion skinning so we can see that. Boom, all the way down. But what we want to do now is we want it to go back up. So we could either, you know, redraw them going back up and trying to get it exactly the same, or we can select all of these frames by clicking on our first frame, holding down the shift key and clicking on our last frame. We're going to right click, we're going to go to copy frames, we're going to click on frame 13, and we're going to right click and we're going to paste frames. But as you can see, it just then copies what has been done. We want that working in reverse, right? We want it to go from there and up again. So what we can do is we can click on frame 13, hold down the shift key, so we've got it selected all the way up to frame 24. We're going to right click and we are going to go to reverse frames. So now we've done a little spin 'em. Right, so now we have our 24 frames of animation. We're going to click on this little button up in the top, which is to test the movie, and we've got a cool bouncing ball. Right, so we've done a cool little animation there. Like I said, in the next video we'll actually look at some of the principles of animation to make that look even more believable and more realistic. As you can see, it's kind of moving at a steady rate. So yeah, so we'll look at that in the next video.